What episode is this, dude? 97?
96, 7.
97? Are we on episode? I think I already did 96, right?
Closing in on 100.
I know, I gotta do something special for 100, dude. This is actually gonna be episode 96. We're on 95 right now. Whew, gotta double check that. I would name this 97. I had to film one by myself. It would have been a debacle.
Yep.
It would have been a debacle. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Live Beyond Average podcast, episode number 96. Here with my co-host Dustin Luebke, and we are on the dawn of some South Dakota rifle deer hunting. We're pretty stoked.
Kicking off.
You know what? Be honest with all the viewers, all the listeners. The last several weeks, like ever since I've gotten back from my New Mexico elk hunt, it was like the hunt totally drained me or something. And I have not been that excited about hunting between what I get back on like the 15th, 16th of September. From the 16th of September till it is November 13th right now, 12th. Like I have not been that jazzed up about hunting this year. I don't know if it's just because I have hunted just mega hard for the last 6-7 years.
Yeah.
And I've just like hit one of those little ruts or something. But like gone out a few times with my bow. Usually I am archery hunting like a madman up until this point. I've only gone out a couple times, but I was a little worried about it because my just desire to be out, it just wasn't quite there. I was more or less like feeling like I had to versus I wanted to. And Monday night, dude, it hit me a little bit, and I was like, I am really excited for this weekend.
Yeah.
And maybe it was just because I just needed to set the bow down for a little bit and I'm just stoked for rifle season.
No, I agree. I didn't put in for rifle tags this year. I just did preference points with having the New Mexico tags.
Yeah.
So I got my archery buck, in September.
Early.
So I haven't been, you're kind of like, oh yeah, I'll get back out with the bow a little bit. I still got my East River tag. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, I already dropped one off at the taxidermist and picked my meat up from the locker. I'm like,
a little bit of money spent.
Yep. So, no, but, same thing. This year probably is I would say the first year in gotta be close to 20 years that I haven't sat in a tree stand.
Yeah.
That's been really
different.
odd for me.
Yeah. That is different.
Actually went, kind of close to the river and did some spot and stock for some mule deer.
Nice.
Trying to get that East River mule deer, trying to do the South
man.
Dakota double, the East River, West River muley, which is way tougher than what I expected it to be.
It is.
I got some buddies coming out. We're going to do another hunt here this upcoming week. And so I kind of went out and went to a few different areas doing some scouting for them. I actually got in on decent mule deer and saw some, pre-rut action, which was really cool.
Nice.
So one bigger deer come and just steal a doe from another.
That's cool.
Another nice 3x3. So that was pretty neat. So I'm going to get back out and do a little bit of that. But this morning we went out and kind of zeroed the rifles in.
Made sure everything was where we left it.
Yes.
Just always hitting that double check. And everything was really good. Everything's good. We actually got like a little break in the weather today because it's been really cold the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Today was beautiful. This morning was
There was no wind. Sun was out right at, sun up, and it was kind of warm. It was actually nice.
Like meant to go shoot 3 rounds downrange with your rifle type of morning. So that was fun, and everything was shooting good. And so now that really that just bumped up the excitement a little more for this weekend. Me and Matthew both have some West River tags, and actually Amy has a tag too. I don't think she'll be out for like another week or two, but I'm pumped now, man. I'm ready just to be out all day and ran into a random article the other day about which I had never really heard of, is like that the red moon phase. Mm-hmm. And read this article and turns out the red moon phase is this weekend, which is it's kind of a cool different scenario with deer hunting, and I'm like, oh, that landed really cool. Sometimes I'll be out with the rifle, so I'm really excited after reading that article and then going out and just seeing and visualizing and seeing if the article kind of matches what I'm seeing or what's going on. And it's really funny because you actually ran into some different articles and listened to some different stuff this week too.
Yeah.
And learned a bunch too.
I went kind of all in on figuring out, rut and barometric pressure, weather, moon phase, and holy cats. You like dive into that, it is a rabbit hole that keeps going.
It's a rabbit hole.
And there's so many different opinions and views out there.
Right.
The best one, the most thorough that went through it, was a Wired to Hunt podcast with Mark Drury.
That guy is crazy.
Number 63. If you're interested in it at all, it kind of touches on everything, and it really gives you a avenue to go from there, and that's what I did. So a lot of the information that I learned, I just picked up, and by all means, I'm not an expert. I am not, I just one of those little tidbit here and there.
Yeah, and I'm like you. I don't know a ton about that kind of stuff because I'm like, I know what I observe, and like I remember stuff that I observed with a moon phase or like a big cold front coming through. Like I remember those things from being out hunting and like observing differences. But, so I use my own little bit of knowledge, but I'm like, I'm kind of that guy that's like, I'm going to go out and hunt anyway. Mm-hmm. Like, whether the moon is a certain way or not, I'm going to go hunting. Mm-hmm. But, like, as I'm looking and I'm trying to learn more and just become a better hunter, like, I have actually, like, this year was the first year when I applied for, like, some different elk hunts in different states. Now that I'm like, acquiring and I'm getting a lot of points in some of these other states, I don't want to use 9 years of Arizona points on a good elk hunt, and I burn my points up on a week that is a crap week of moon phase that potentially could mess up, and you lose all those points, so you're waiting. So it's like now I'm starting to be like, okay, before I apply for this hunt, I'm looking forward to those season dates. I'm going to look at them and see what everything's doing, and not that it could make a difference or not, but at least maybe eliminate some things that could be a hindrance.
Yes.
If you're gonna cash in a bunch of points, maybe start look. I mean, I'm gonna learn.
The moons go out; they're 27.3 days on a cycle, and you can see them throughout the whole year for the whole calendar year next year.
Yep.
So if you're looking at a 1 week in September and you're gonna have no moon, or just not optimal times, I guess. You're like, I don't know if I'm gonna do that one when I could put in for this other hunt or go hunt. Early season mule deer or whatever, or early season whitetail from tree stand.
Right. So you can really start using it just as hunt planning. Might make a difference for you, might not, but it's definitely, if you start stacking up some points, I think it's definitely something to start looking at.
Yep.
For sure. Because it might be something where you're like, well, you know what, I'm not going to put in for that this year. Next year's going to be better timing. I'll put in for this other state that I can cash in points for. So a different season hunt. Save that one for the following year. Just try to eliminate as many negative variables that could put a negative on the hunt.
Right.
So,
and
hunt planning.
This year, for November, anyway, the full moon's the 12th, which was...
Is that today? What is today, dude?
Last night, I think.
It was last night, yep.
Last night was a
13th
full moon.
today. Yeah.
So, basically your waxing moon is your 6 days before the full moon.
Okay.
So your waxing moon...
Teach me.
Your waxing moon is when the moon is up in the evening before the sun goes down.
Okay.
So that's actually going to get deer on their feet. You're going to see more movement in the evening when that is coming up. So then you have your full moon. So during the day, your moon's going to be underfoot, basically is what they said. So midday, that underfoot is going to push those deer up on their feet. So you're going to see a lot more movement from like 11 to 1, 10 to 2 range.
Okay.
Because that's the way the moon is.
So you're actually going to be potentially seeing that rut action.
Yes.
Like when people talk about the rut being on, that could be one of the variables. That's actually why you're seeing it.
Yep. And then as the moon falls off, a waning moon, as it's falling off a full moon and it's getting smaller, that moon is going to be up in the sky in the morning yet.
Yep.
So you're going to have your sun and your moon in the morning, and that's going to get deer activity up in the AM hours. So you're going to see more activity, more than in the evening.
So potentially like next week, and early next week is going to be potentially could be a lot like that here in South Dakota. I mean,
and that's when they call that red moon, is when that moon's up in the sky.
Both morning and evening, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's the way I understood it.
You see the peak activity during your normal times when you would be hunting, your morning and evening, right before right at first light and last light. But they're going to be active longer, those periods.
Okay.
So the one interesting thing I found we had some flatlanders from Minnesota, Bernie and Trav, asking us if we had any, when's the rut starting?
Yeah, they've been hammered yet.
Yeah. I'm like, well, it's going on. It's going right now. The thing with the moon phase is the rut usually happens at the same time every year.
Yep.
Your first does start coming in right in the end of October. You'll get your singles that'll, they'll start plucking them off. And that last week in October, that's kind of when the big boys get active. Like that's when that's when they start showing up. They start, coming to those scrapes. Another interesting thing was they said 85% of the scrapes and rubs are done by 2.5-year-old and younger bucks. The little basket rat guys.
So don't get too jacked.
I'm like, those little buttheads, you see this huge scrape and you're like, oh, that's got to be a monster deer. Obviously a bigger rub is going to be a bigger buck. But
yeah.
They said those guys are way more active way earlier.
Okay.
So they said they're the ones that are going to open up the scrapes, and then the big guys will come in and just mark their territory right, and when the time is right.
Yeah.
So that last week in November, and they said there'll be a little bit of a break early November.
October.
Or October. Right? Yep. And then the second and third week in November is when the majority of the does come in.
Okay.
So they said you'll see a lot of movement finding those does. So then they said that's when, if the moon's right, your moon phases line up, you're going to see a lot of rut activity during the day. So
if the moon phase matches it.
If the moon phase matches it. If it doesn't, it's going to be nocturnal activity.
And then around here, everybody's like, well, they're just not rutting this year.
Yep.
When really, it's just happening at night.
Yeah, you're not seeing it. Or, they're coming out, they're getting up around that noon when nobody's sitting in their stand all day. Or only a few people are seeing it during midday because everybody's at work or, obviously not sitting in a stand freezing their tail off this week.
Right.
But, so that was really interesting with those two scenarios.
Yeah. And when you think about, the timing, like you say, second, third week in November, you think about, just common sense, thinking of, we have a lot of ranchers around here. I grew up, around a lot of buddies that are ranchers. You think about, how they time, calving. When's the optimal time to have calves or whatever. Think about when antelope have babies.
Yep.
If people are claiming you're seeing ton of rut activity in early October, mid-October, it's probably not actual rut activity, because if you think about when that fawn's going to drop, it's going to still be really wintry times in the Midwest.
Yeah, they won't drop them.
They won't drop. So it's exactly. So think about breeding times, pregnancy times. It does match that they're being bred in mid to late November for the most part into early December. That way they're having their fawns in the spring, later in the spring when the weather's optimal too.
Right.
So as just a common guy like myself thinking about the non-science part, I guess, to me it's most likely the rut's always going to be later.
Yep.
Whether or not you're seeing it or not.
Right.
It's obviously happening because deer are having fawns.
Yeah. Most all of them will drop their fawns around the same time.
Yep.
And that's one of the things. And around here, once the crops start coming out, it starts pushing deer out, and that's when you start seeing that activity too, because they're going to be out in those cut fields. Yeah. They're not hidden in the fields. They can't hide down in some little swale in the...
We talked about that the last 2 days, me and you commuting back and forth from some of the areas that we're working at, most of the time we don't see deer in some of these areas, and we're the last 2 days we're both dude, do you see all the deer out this morning? Actually, yeah, you never see deer out there, but crops are coming out, right time of year, you're seeing deer where you normally aren't seeing them.
Yeah, I did the old lay on the brakes and pull in a field driveway on the way down here because I saw a mega whitetail. The biggest one that I've seen this year.
That's exciting too.
For sure, a 5x5, 10-pointer outside the ears, really heavy, and he was
tall, huh?
Yeah, 300 yards away, and I'm like, whoa, I'm over pulling in a field driveway, being that guy. I just wanted to see
awesome,
this deer.
Dude.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah, no. So that's kind of the gist of the moon phase. There's a few different apps out there. Best Hunting Times is kind of one that I downloaded last night, which it's okay. It doesn't give you the red moon stuff. Most of the red moon apps you have to pay for.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't have that much time left this year that I'm going to be hunting, so I wasn't going to really buy another app at this time. But there is some stuff out there, and plenty of guys will, collaborate, and somebody might have it.
Yeah.
Some of your buddies might have it too.
Yeah.
But they said the main thing with the moon phase is that's kind of a baseline, but weather always trumps moon phase. Weather trumps everything. So he was really talking about barometric pressure, rises and falls, and same thing, another rabbit hole that you can go down.
Yeah.
And, this is your optimum barometric pressure. If it's anything over 30.2, you're going to have high activity. Yep, that's right. He said anything from 30.1 to 30.7 is super high deer movement. Super low barometric pressure, you're probably not going to see a lot of movement. But when people talk about fronts coming in, like storm front coming in, so the main thing to watch is on an actual news station, they've got the high and the low pressure, where the big curves with the arrows of where it's going and how it's going to come through and when it's coming through. Said watch those, because when that high pressure front hits, that's going to be your optimal deer movement right when that high pressure hits for about the first day or two. If it holds, if it holds that pressure, you're going to have really good deer movement. And then same thing, if you have a low pressure system come in, they're not going to be quite as active. Another thing that I kind of get the barometric pressure. I haven't really looked at.
Yeah.
Same thing. I kind of hunt the days I can hunt.
Right.
And he was saying it's more of the guys that can, and gals that can say, okay, I'm looking at this 14-day outlook, and I'm able to take this day and this day. I can only hunt 2 days out of this 14 days.
And they're picking optimal days.
And they're picking those optimal days. Which
is smart. If you're limited on days to hunt, it's a maybe great thing to start studying and figuring it out.
And if you've got a target deer that you're going after,
that too.
You're probably going to see him during that time.
At least, hey, if it increases your odds 5%, it's 5% better odds.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, take every chance, whether you think it's baloney or not. If, they have, a dozen years of studying this stuff and, putting their trail cam pictures with all their notes, everything together, they obviously have some evidence between, when deer move better. Why not use some of that evidence and at least try it out and see if it increases your odds?
Yeah.
Play the odds.
Yeah. Stay in spreadsheets. He puts in the temperatures, the barometric pressure, the winds, every year, all these pictures, and all. It was just like, holy cats, that's a full-time job. Obviously, that's what he does full-time, but...
Yeah, because don't they talk about, temperatures, too? If temperatures are, you need to go, if temperatures are close to averages, that's the best.
Yep, everything's based off that average temp.
Okay.
So here, you got your average temp for the year, and just base it off of your average. So they said, people will want to hunt that cold front when that cold front comes in. Yes, but if that cold front just dips below the average, that's going to be a good movement. Higher movement, just dip below. In the early season, I talked about, your average highs are 70s. I shot my deer as 84 degrees this year. Mm-hmm. They're still going to move. They have their summer coats. They still got to move. They still got to drink. They still got to eat.
Yep.
It's more in the fall when, October, they start getting their winter coats. Mm-hmm. So when they get their winter coats on and that average is here and you get a warm front that comes through and pushes them up, nobody wants to go walk around with their winter coat on when it's hot out.
Right.
Deer don't either. They'll go nocturnal. They just won't move as much. They'll wait till it cools down. And same goes for if it dips too low. This week we had some below zero overnights and below zero wind chills.
Yep, they probably weren't moving either.
Probably not moving a whole lot when it, early in the season when it spikes that low. Obviously later in the year when they're trying to survive.
Right.
Survival in January and February, they're still going to move.
So that's super interesting too, because I look at the weather for this weekend, and you're like, okay, you got the red moon phase, so that's the start of the topic day. I'm like, oh, cool, that's exciting. But then I look at the temps, and I'm like, oh, it's actually supposed to be almost 50, 51, 58. So it's I don't know what the average temperature is, but I'm guessing it's lower than that. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like you said, the moon phase, that's optimal for you, but then you have weather that's maybe not quite as optimal. Mm-hmm. Where is it going to balance out? obviously you still just need to be out there.
And
But it's just fun. It's going to be fun to actually observe now. And I kind of know a few things.
The third factor that they put in there is what phase of the rut is on. If it's peak rut,
don't matter.
Don't matter. The deer are going to go and they're going to find and they're going to be out searching.
Yep.
You know, and that's kind of where we're hitting this weekend.
We are, dude.
I think from, you know, the posts that we're seeing on social media, from the friends that we're talking to, other hunters.
Guys who've been out.
Yep. People who are in the field, not just people.
What I'm seeing just driving back and forth into town.
Yes.
Like, you can tell that it's different right now.
Yeah, that big boy this morning, he was standing over the top of a doe. Just there was one doe feeding and one laying down, and he was just standing there.
Which, if a big buck is already locking up does, we're there, dude.
Yeah.
Like it's not like he's cruising looking. Like, if he's got one on lockdown, big whitetail, that's kind of like a telltale sign right there.
Yeah.
In my book.
Yeah, especially during daylight.
From a guy that's not quite an expert. I just think this is fun stuff. Like, why not always try to expand your knowledge? This is something I've never really dove into that much, so it's super interesting.
Yeah. And then another thing, I know I'm throwing a ton of information out there,
it.
but it's just basic stuff, so take it for what it is.
Yeah.
Go run with whatever. And that's what I'm trying to do this week. I'm trying to, you know, just listen as I'm doing other stuff and listening to some podcasts and some different views. And it all differs on where you're at.
That's very
true. You know, because basically you got a warm front coming through and it's going to slow down movement out here, but east, you know, over here at X, it could be super high movement, yet high pressure. So that's different wherever. The other thing that I found interesting that I've actually really noticed was wind and sun and clouds. So it's he kind of strayed off a little bit. It's kind of a side run. And he said deer don't see real well on cloudy days. They said their senses work better, like no sun and no clouds at night. They get a crisper image with their eye.
Sure.
So cloudier days, which is easy for us to hunt, you know, because you're not squinting and you're not heating up. They said deer kind of get finicky on cloudy days. You'll see less movement. There'll still be movement because they have to move. But it said a sunnier day will bring more movement during the rut times.
That's really funny because, like, I shot my giant mule deer last year was after or during kind of a colder weather pattern, and it was the 2 days prior were really cloudy, kind of crap days. And the morning I shot him, or late morning, was like not a cloud in the sky, bright, like, and he was on top of a doe at 11:30 a.m. like sunny as heck. You know what I mean? Isn't that funny?
Yeah, no, that was some of the things I was picking out too. Another one was the wind, which I found this to be super true in South Dakota.
Yeah.
If there is no wind, those deer are on high alert. They don't like it.
Yep.
They like to be in the cover of a little bit of wind, and I said if there's no wind, their senses, you're at a even more disadvantage with their senses, because now they have sight and smell, and now they can hear everything.
And like to the opposite, like if it's mega windy, they don't hardly move either because they can't hear anything. Like it's like two opposites. You gotta have like optimals, like a little bit of wind.
Yeah.
Like a little bit of wind. And that's what I use I do a ton of mule deer hunting, archery spot and stock, and it's like I look for those days that are, you know, pushing the higher winds, because I love finding one in their bed and you got the higher winds and like sweet. Like I can do whatever I want getting in there because they can't hear anything.
Yeah.
You know? So it slows down the movement big time, but if you can find one in that higher wind, you have like every advantage in the world to go kill that deer.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's awesome.
And with the no wind too is, you know, another thing is thermals, high and low, how your scent travels. It's really tough to sit in a tree with no wind because your scent cone kind of can go wherever.
Right.
You don't.
It's changing all the time too.
If you're spotting stock in something, if there's no wind, you get up and you have this big scent cone. It can shift down and can shift up and go wherever with no wind. But if you have a little bit of wind, you know, I can approach from the north, and they're not going to get me. Or, hey, I can sit in this tree stand because I have a north wind, so I'll be able to, anything out to the north of me is going to be awesome.
Yep.
And with that wind, whoosh, another turn.
Oh.
So, movement again, if you've got a bunch of north winds in a row, north or northwest, northeast winds that are a little bit cooler, and then you get the first south that comes up. That first 12 to 24 hours after a major wind switch, and it was north to south was like the major one that they're going to see most movement in. Anything like if you have a whole bunch of west winds for, particular days in a row, 2 or 3 days in a row, and it switches to like an east or southeast, that's going to bump up the movement too.
Yep, I shot that deer on a southeast wind too. It was blowing from the northwest for 3 days straight. Yep. That next morning was like a 15-mile-an-hour southeast. They were just like, and they were living in the same spot for 3 days, hardly moving. That morning they were a mile and a half into a different spot and moving around, active, and it was bright and southeast wind. Yeah, crazy.
I mean, there was so much information.
Theories, dude. Yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, and it's neat to see the different ones and kind of pick the different ones apart because each person that's doing that podcast or talking, like he talked on a broad range. Mark Drury did talk on a broad range, so it was really neat to get like the full spectrum. Yeah. And then he kind of went back. Everything's based on the weather, but rut is up here. Okay. So he was like, okay, yep, this is cool, this is cool. He didn't totally take you down one. I listened to one moon phase one, and this guy was like, no, we're only hunting these days, and these are the days that we sit in this stand, and nobody can sit in this stand this day. It's like, okay, yeah, that's not always doable.
Yeah, right. It's like taking it mega extreme. But with this, there's always the extreme, the not so extreme, and the middle ground. Right. You know what I mean? So find what works for you, works in your little area. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like these guys are hunting a lot of the same areas, their same farms, and they're building a lot of this information off of their spots. Yep. You know what I mean? Granted, they have farms in different states and things like that, but they're still like, what works in their farm might not work on your farm here in middle of South Dakota. Mm-hmm. But some of the information totally might help you too. So take it and then build your own info off of it.
Yeah, and some other, that part will kind of get off of that now because that's the end of my end of my knowledge on that. Yeah. And that's kind of what I got so far. Right. I did listen to a couple other things this week, and some things that really got me thinking about overanalyzing your hunts. Yeah, and
totally. Which goes right with this.
This stuff, I was like, holy cats. My brain was just mush after listening to all this, taking all this information in. Yeah. And then you start analyzing and overanalyzing. It's like, okay, keep it back, rein it back in.
If you want to go hunt and have fun. Because that's what it's about. Like I said right at the beginning before we got into this, I'm gonna go hunt anyway, so I really don't care what the moon's doing. Like, it's just fun stuff to look at and know and be like, oh, it might be like crazy good hunting this weekend. Mm-hmm. It's fun. But if you're a guy that's gonna go anyway, right? Yeah, no need to overanalyze.
Focus on those small things.
Yeah,
I mean,
I like looking at wind. Yep, that's my big thing. Like, I look at the wind, I look at weather fronts a little bit, and purely whether weather front happens or not, I'm still gonna be out there. But it's just like that level of excitement for me, like, I personally might be on a little bit higher alert just because of the weather change or whatever it is.
Yeah, and that was the thing too. There's another app, Weather Underground. It's just Wonderground is the app. Okay. W Underground, and you could go back in that app and get all that information. So if you went out and you just log. I don't know if you keep a journal of all your hunts or what you saw that day or whatever.
It's all up here.
Yeah, me too. But I'm
just
awful
kidding.
At forgetting stuff.
Just kidding.
But you can go back on those days and get your highs, your lows, your average, your barometric pressures, if you want to look at all that stuff too, along with your wind direction, wind speed throughout that day. So they have all the daily activity. One last thing, just to switch gears a little bit. Yeah. I was out doing the archery spot and stock, and I noticed the one day I went in and pitch black. and I knew I could walk like a 2-track way back in there, and then once I got in there, I'd have to, either wait till sunup or use my headlamp. And I chose to wait till sunup, which it was what it was. I didn't get back as far as I did, but I saw a lot of deer really close to me. The next day, I went in. I waited till it got a little bit light so I could see, so I could pick my path. So there's 2 theories on this: bumping deer and blowing deer out. So, and I know I did both of these to a T. And it's one of those where you hear it and you're like, oh dang, light bulb goes on.
Yep.
So when you go in the pitch dark, you said red or green light if you need to, low, not on the top of your head, keep it down by your feet just so you can see. If you're in the pitch black, you can bump a deer and they'll run 40, 100 yards away, because they really don't know what you are yet.
Sure.
But if you go in with a little bit of light, even the first morning light, so you can see, and you run into a deer, you'll blow them out.
Yeah.
Blow them out a mile, because they can know exactly what you are.
Oh yeah.
And a threat. And I did both of those last week when I was out there.
And you saw like the difference in both of them.
Oh yeah, and it was, and they're both whitetails.
Yep.
When I did it, and the one I could see as he went over the horizon, and it was really black, that it was a smaller buck.
Yeah.
But he just kind of bounded, never blew out.
Yep.
Just bounded.
Just moved away, make sure he was safe.
Tucked behind a little cedar.
Yep.
And then the next day, I was walking down in there, and I come up over this rise, and there's another whitetail buck, and he sees me, and he is gone.
He gone.
Yeah.
Dude, when I used to be big into whitetail hunting, I was hunting over this awesome milo field, and I had a ground blind set up in there, and but the only way to walk to it, to get into it properly, was cut around this draw and cut up this backside. Well, all the deer would feed in this tall grass to work up to the milo, and the way I had to get into it was basically cut in between. And so it was almost, I would guarantee I'd run into deer every single time going in the morning. It wouldn't matter, and you just had to live with it. Well, if I went in early enough, I'd have to go in really early in the dark, I could actually walk through the deer. I'd have my green light on, and like you said, they would run maybe 60 yards. I'd get in my ground blind, and someone would come up, and they'd all be there.
Yeah, settle back down.
They'd settle back down. They'd run a little ways, but those same deer, they might run 100 yards, even 200 yards back down to the creek. They come back up onto the milo. Because they weren't that spooked. They just knew, something's there that's not one of us, whatever. But they weren't, so spooked out that it was a person. I did that with my elk that I shot in the hills. I busted him at 4 a.m. in the dark. Yep. And I didn't have, there was a pretty good moon that night with a little bit of clouds. So I didn't have a lamp. I was just mooning it, you know. And I actually, I bumped him at 30 yards, and he bugled. I couldn't even see him. And he bugled, and you could hear him just crashing. And I just cow called a couple times, and I kept him within 100 yards until light, And so it's but like you said, it was dark enough. I wasn't lit up. It was enough for them to be well, something's there, but it wasn't a threat,
right?
So it makes sense. It's funny, what you said. It's true though. When a deer sees a person, they're so gone. Yeah.
And especially if they blow at you.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Let's shoot all the does.
Yep. Those stinking does just blow, and then it seems like every other deer is hey, I see you too now. And
it never happens on windy days.
No.
It's only on the dead calm days. Like you said, but they're on high alert.
Right.
On those super calm days.
Yeah, I had one of those days out there last week, and
it's the worst.
Oh, it was so hard, and I was probably about 180 yards away from this group, and I could not get back out of there. I got in, and I needed to get back around to get to the next ridge, and I was stuck.
Yeah.
And there was 4 does that just had me. They knew there was something in that cedar, or behind that cedar, and it wasn't right.
They wouldn't let it go.
No.
They just wouldn't let it go.
Nope. So, yeah. What about the mule deer rut? What's your thoughts?
Dude, I wish I had thoughts on it. I'm just kidding. I don't know, last year, I don't know what it was, I spent so much time out in the field last year, and I literally, I got to just visualize, seeing so many things, like I knew those first 4 days of the rifle season were going to be on fire. Like I could just see it, and they were good. Like I have phone footage of mule deer like running around looking for does, like 2 giant bucks squaring off, like raking hard, like I'm talking big freaking deer. And like I haven't seen much of that ever in my life when it comes to mule deer being aggressive like that. Like the last time I had seen that would have been in like 2005 when I was in high school. I remember like I shot a mule deer. It's like 2 mule deer that were like going hard at each other. Like so I was like, I don't know. I just had this. It just worked out. I saw the rut happening. The weather was conducive to it. Like it was totally. I mean, it was mid-November, so timing was the same around here in South Dakota. I just thought the weather was like perfect too with it. It was a little bit cooler. We weren't getting mega heat in November like we get sometimes.
The
like
Indian summers.
Yeah, where it's like they're totally having that rut activity at night. I mean they're just staying locked in a little bit longer. Like the year before, that's how it was. Like I had a couple different mule deer tags, and it was just warmer during that first week, and like you just weren't seeing anything. Like things just weren't up and moving, or like the time it did move, legal time was over.
Right.
So it was, I really think I'm a big believer in, obviously weather does play a difference in just not necessarily like stemming the rut. The rut's happening. It's just when those deer are actually on their feet moving.
Right.
And so I don't know. Like I don't want to sit here and claim like I know something about it, because like I don't know. I don't know what their timing. I think around South Dakota, I think the timing's close to the same, or slightly later.
Yep.
Like I think I always see it. It seems like I see whitetail activity before I see mule deer activity typically, but that's just my own observation from being out in the field a lot. So I think you can get into sometimes late November even, and you can still have some sweet mule deer hunting. Even in December, like you have a muzzleloader tag. That first week of December, it can be stellar still.
Yeah.
You can still get some of that post rut. The big bucks are still like, you might get some big bucks really cruising looking for a doe that hasn't been bred yet. Like I hunted with my muzzleloader 2-3 years ago when I had my muzzleloader tag, a freaking whale of a mule deer for 2 weeks, and like he was still cruising there on like December 11th, I think it was. Like, and he was legit cruising. Like he was cruising, raking, like, and this was into the second week of December, and he was still being really aggressive. Like you could tell he was looking, and I was hunting like this 3,000 acre kind of like area, 3,200, and so like I would see him moving. He kind of moved in the same areas, but like he was definitely looking for does. He was still a little aggressive with some younger bucks. He was raking. He was lip curling a little bit still. Like it was. So I think like you get a muzzleloader tag in December, you're still there could be a possibility that you could get some big buck movement,
right?
When it comes to mule deer. So
yeah, no, I'm just going off of this year and a few past years' experience. November 6th, I was out, and that's when I got on that 3x3, and I was actually gonna go after him, and I got him to about 150, and he definitely had one doe. There's a group of does, and then there was another smaller buck, but he had one that he was kind of courting and kind of trying to push off, but she didn't want to leave yet. But he was, obviously bristled up, but he never pushed that other smaller fork buck out of there. And then that's when that bigger 4x4 came over the hill and puffed up, and I was like, "Whoa, that's a mature deer." And he came over the hill, and he puffed up and came down in that basically down in that little draw, and took that doe away. He puffed up at that 3x3, took that doe, went back up over with her, and just kind of singled her out and pushed her back up over the hill, left him down there with those other deer, and then went and bedded down with her.
Yep.
But when they're usually mule deer, when they're in more of a peak rut, will have a harem of does.
Yeah.
Where they'll have 3 to
a dozen.
Yeah.
Like your biggest buck you shot had a dozen does with him, and that was what, November 9th?
Yep.
And he was legit rut action.
Oh,
We talk about late for mule deer. That was November 9th.
Yep.
And he was like bristled up to high heaven. He was puffing at that smaller buck that was in that group, and they had there was a dozen does in there, wasn't there? 10 to 12.
Yeah, they just kept jumping the fence after we shot
there was
him.
a bunch. Like, and he was legit. Like, if it wasn't heavy rut, he was right there at going into it. You know what I mean? Like, they were definitely his does. He did not want that younger buck getting any closer to what he was. He was being territorial. So
and it was there. Yeah, last week there obviously wasn't that super territorial. He literally just came over, bristled up, and said, "Hey, I'm stealing this one.
I'm here, bro.
Yeah, see you later."
I'm here.
But yeah, so then, later in the year when they're still, they'll keep that big group of does, and then, like you said, December, once it snows, they'll be trudging through snow still.
It can happen.
Still pushing does around. Where I think a lot of the whitetail stuff in December is kind of, winding down, but then you get that second, basically second cycle, where some of the does that didn't come in or missed getting breeding, they'll come in.
Yep.
So you get those bucks that'll still cruise, and they're going to be cruising more food sources.
Right.
Not the same scrape lines or anything like that. They're going to be where the does are starting to winter, I
Group
guess.
up. Yep. Eat their foodsies.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. That's a good topic. That was covering some really expertise stuff by two not so expertise guys.
Yeah.
I thought we did a good job.
Hey.
Dude, it's fun
gives,
information.
Yeah, it gives somebody something to run with, like it did me.
Yep. You're running with new information. And that's what this is all about, whether it's in our fitness life, whether it's in our hunting life, whether it's in your just everyday personal life. It's all about always learning new things, becoming a better person. That's what Living Beyond Average. That's why it's called the Live Beyond Average podcast. That's the really fun thing about it all. It's we don't claim to be an expert on much, but we're always willing to learn. You know what I mean? It's pretty cool. So, dude, thanks for bringing that information today. I actually didn't know how long that would last. I thought we might cover that, and we dove and branched pretty good.
I took a lot of notes yesterday while I was painting.
That's awesome.
Taking notes and
a
lot of information there, and my brain was mush, so I'm sure there's some other people's brains that are mush right now too from listening to me ramble.
For sure. Well, yeah, hopefully we have some good podcast stuff next week or the week after next after some mule deer hunting this coming week. Hopefully we have some stories. I hope so.
3 rifle tags. I'm going back out archery hunting with a few other guys. So
dude.
Got some other good friends that have some rifle tags this week, and then the following week,
East River
opens up the 23rd. And
dude, when I was shooting this morning, and I even just looking down through the scope, I just dream of a big old mule deer. I don't know what it is, man. I just hope we can find a couple nice ones this year with all the good clover growth, the wet spring, summer. There could be some good deer roaming around, and I put in a little time this week, man. I hope we can turn something up. I hope it just turns out well. So
it'll be interesting to see the numbers with the new tag system and the new draw system, and see how many people are actually out, if it's as crazy as it usually is, or if it's toned back a little bit. Or
dude, it's hard to tell. You just never know. Things are so year to year.
Yeah.
So thanks for tuning in, you guys. I appreciate you jumping on, spending the time with us today, and enjoying another episode. Of course, as you know, if you're a frequent listener, share it with somebody else that maybe hasn't heard us yet, heard the podcast that you think might enjoy. Every little bit helps. We appreciate you.
Yeah. If you got any other topics, shoot them our way.
We always want more things to talk about. So if you have something you want to cover, that's how this one actually came to be. It was brought up to us, and we were like, we don't know anything about that. And so, went and learned.
I couldn't speak freely on it, I guess. So, when Trav and Bernie were like, hey, when's the rut happen in South Dakota? Oh, boy.
Yeah. November.
Yes.
All right, podcast over. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Yep.
Oh, no, we didn't press record.